G'day, Lukey.
Hi, Dr. Jubb.
It's a great show today. I just was wondering actually how many people, or it's interesting that we could go over a tiny bit of Jubb cell rejuvenation itself. And
Nice.
what's the pancreas and the Brunner gland? I mean, many people don't even hear about the Brunner gland.
Oh,
They
wow.
don't know what that is. Um, yeah.
It's
Um, but I saw that cortisol, which is a behavioural thing, was a major reason for raised calcium in the blood. It always raises calcium, and no matter what somebody does, food-wise or something, if they don't have whole brain functioning, they're going to cause more cortisol always, where reaction is. And those sorts of reactions are selective restrictive violations, meaning that sort of really violates our general flow where we are, where someone is. It always causes a bit of brain freeze, which might, I don't know, we could get to that. But started me off a bit when I saw that you could predict where somebody suddenly had brain freeze. It was like a 4 hertz cycle. Anything that actually caused that would cause a brain freeze.
Whoa.
And there were these spindled repeating waves that would quick smart pass through anything that where somebody was, where that happened, and they would have an initial spike wave that was a response to what was said, sort of thing, or done, behaviour-wise, analog, sculpted, or in your non-verbals. And that was a selective restrictive violation because it sort of caused someone to feel, something was amiss, which typically it does, of course, because in whole brain functioning, you're using direction to go toward, and so you're really doing what you can to keep your directedness in your language of what you're actually going toward and what you're bringing inside. And so, the word "this" is about something inside, of course, and "that" is about something outside. So how playful sort of someone is, and this is our original state, and interest and pleasure cause an integration of the whole brain, integrating all the parts. And so where somebody wasn't really feeling interested or pleasure, that can have not been an original state for sure. Difficult it was to actually get anything to be passed on where that was. And congruency really is what was going on before we talked about this and what's going on afterward, causing what this is as parallelism in processing is congruent. And so your moment is congruent more where you're looking at what happened before, what happened afterward, and is it parallel? And so that's integration. Association really in whole brain function is really more about how you're showing up. What verb tense are you using? Like the word is becomes your favourite verb where it wasn't before. Have a little look at everything you wrote, you'll see, or even said just about. And whereas is in that, I think you'll be quite astounded, But it was really interesting to me to absolutely see that there were these spike wave spindles that would repeat, that would run through the brain and totally run through anything that where you were thinking it would just interrupt it, you see. Yeah. And before it happened, you'd see this like little 4 hertz cycle go, and bam, there you go. Somebody's having brain freeze sort of thing. Where that's happened to you, it is because some pattern isn't existed that could have reframed whatever that prejudice was. So you've learned how to respond more effectively, let's say. But otherwise also too, you really focus on what you do, what you say, because you want to have rapport where people are, because it's really where you've got money in the bank, the opportunity appears, doesn't it? Yes, it does. And the average person sort of really might need a strategy to break through, don't they? Yes? Like firewalking, I would use firewalking, and I would have people use this kind of as a breakthrough experience. And so you're walking through things you fear, like base jumping, skydiving, and things that such like this really takes a little bit for you to all of a sudden just jump out of the airplane, doesn't it? To do something that's like this, you see. And you could imagine this very good, because the mind can conceive new possibility as you go through the movement experience, and you wire in a new movement experience. Movement happens to be the broadest pathway for programming change. And the moment that you actually cotton on to what this is and you start the movement experience, like for instance, have you ever listened and sort of figured out actually what the stress note is, where someone is themselves? You know, that stress note is pretty much a note that they're actually always operating from. And where someone's relaxed, of course, you know, you're really going to get mostly in the note of G, because somebody's chakras are all opened all the way up through to their head. Carefully, of course, listening, you can hear where a voice is coming from. And if it's coming from the belly, of course, or and it's slightly rolled, slightly slurred, you know, somebody's really way more relaxed, aren't they? And that's actually how you feel too. And then what happens when somebody would have used the opposite of that, and they used clipped sort of language? If you don't do this, you're going to get in trouble. That's sort of an example of clipped language. Coming from the adversive amygdala tegmentum complex, which really is about rage. Especially if you get your eyeballs to twitch a bit, and then you're able to trigger more rage, sort of thing. But you've got to squint your corrugator superciliar muscles of your face, you know, which is furrowing your eyebrows together. You've got to bring the press the orbital muscle of the mouth down, you know, upon each other, and so you're pressing your lips more together. And you've got to kind of grimace and pull the lips down just slightly, you know. If you push the bottom lip out, it's sort of like a pouty type of a thing. And these things assist to cause you to get into the right brain state, you know, if it was rage, let's say. But if you left something out like you didn't twitch your eyeballs, well, it's not going to work as well, you know. Or let's say that you added in there, like you got your sternomastoid muscle activated, so you push your head forward, you know, and you got your muscles all activated so that you're really in a kimbo state. And where somebody's in a kimbo state, like, you can ask them, what does it say how relaxed your shoulders are, you know, as you're listening? Or like, how relaxed is your breath or your tummy, let's say, you know? And what's the reason why that's not completely relaxed all the time anyway? But anyway, whole brain functioning is about those sorts of things. And really, actually, somebody really practicing way more what's excellent people do. You've got a real hell of a lot more satisfaction and optimism and outlook, don't you, really? And fixatedness and brooding and disruptive avoidance sort of stuff, which is state-specific with aversion, doesn't exist anymore, you see. And so the blood pressure returns back to normal right there in the doctor's office. And that was way better than an antipsychotic pill taken, you know. I think most people kind of have forgotten that, because it's got a you know, short-term hypnotherapy, which is really what everybody should really be doing. Otherwise, it's a very slippery slope more to neoplastic types of condition, because cortisol isn't being managed. And children, as you know, they get whacked with cortisol the first time they go to school, and it just increases, yeah. And when you have a test, it increases even more, yeah. And so the cells have to be able to regenerate, but how can they if somebody's not in whole brain patterning and functioning, see? Because you're going to create endogenous opiates, beta endorphins and enkephalins. Wow. And that's so nice, because what they do is actually they bump into a bit of toast or spaghetti, something left behind, see? And now these beautiful little opiates, they sort of leave a smoke trail behind in the body. And anyway, immune cells are coming, you know, they're sniffing, you know, and they sniff and they bump into one of these trails. They go, whoa, 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 whoa. And so they're now chemotaxed toward that toxin to clean it up. And so would somebody say that actually laughter or happiness isn't part of someone's actual healing? Oh my God, it's everything. Wouldn't you agree? course it is. And how would you stop neoplastic condition if you just had a lot of don't want, can't do, try, but must only, always in your speech? Yeah? Always starting out with a muscle which began, or the activity which was a flexor muscle and not an extensor muscle, a muscle that pulled you in versus holding you up against Earth's gravitational pull. Which these muscles are all connected more to states of like your muscles which open you up, they're called your extensors. When you go to stand up, you open your limbs, you open, things, yes? It's connected more to pleasure. It's connected more to interest. It's connected more to, whole brain patterning. And limited mind function is where people tense, and then all of a sudden they'll bring their latissimus dorsis and bring their arms, in toward their side a bit, like, and tense and white knuckle out their hands a little bit and all this sort of thing, and become more like white like a ghost. But these heat and cold shock proteins are all being initiated by emotion. And so somebody's either, really cool and smooth in life, or they are, can be considered hot-headed. And both these people are extremely spiritual people who are just luked out, it's called, meaning in the middle of the road. They're not very too spiritual at all. It's sort of like just being a medium warmth, and that's it. But when you experience these temperature shifts like hot and cold, it really does stimulate more of these hot, cold shock proteins. And these are the very things that actually stop neoplastic condition. And so, often actually, why wouldn't it be wise that actually people learn about ice? And, of course, you see people go through life and they really are not necessarily really stopping muscle loss, which muscle going to give you a longer life. Of course, 4NR, which is a product that we have, somebody could have that, and it actually will lower your blood pressure completely overnight while you sleep. Did you wake up in the morning and you've got proper blood pressure? Eye awareness more is about your own self-mastery and controlling more your inner dialogue, what we were talking about, and you're going to have a lot more neural efficiency. A book about all this would be really good. Yet what's external, you could agree, is really outside the body, and balance and orientation. It's like your orientation, like if you're internal, external, environmentally sort of thing. Got to be in balance, 50-50 there. And also, where you're getting information from, is that from the inside you or outside too? There'll be a 50-50 relation there, where you are. And everybody actually will feel where you are, remain, where these two things are in balance, like you're really in balance. So it's sort of more the structure of balance. And how about having sticky factor more for the things that you could remember that really could work? You see, yeah? And employing and putting into practice these things. But I can have said, stop all the don't want, can't do, try, but must only for at least 1 year, and until you learn how to frame things positively and throw them back in again. People go, what? It really is your attitude and your emotional being that where these sulfur-bearing amino acids are produced in your gut, and also, of course, in nature. And these are the most powerful antioxidants in the whole world. And, of course, they have these sulfur-bearing and also fragrant amino acids. So it's really the sulfur dioxygenase pathway which is going to become big. Imagine just for a moment, of course, like we talked about how it's possible to, you could have found a secret that was locked up in the poles because you looked at the ice there and you saw there was all the trees that we have all over the earth right now just as equivalent to a size of bread, but what burned would have been the size of a huge semi-trailer worth of trees. So you could wonder, where's all the trees? They're all gone. And what, you know, you got 3-4 mile high trees back in the past. And did we know that actually the Earth was 12 times smaller and everything was all together and it's grown 12 times larger than it was, and actually did that to water coming out of suspended state in the rock, and 99% basic of all the water still in the rock. and only 1% of the water that the Earth actually has is actually flowing. And what happens when water comes out of the rock? And water expands, doesn't it? Expand up to 1,500%, don't it? And so the Earth really hasn't ever actually changed its density or its weight, its mass, no. But it has changed its gravity. You know, it was only 25% of the gravity that it has now, because the surface has gone such a larger distance away from the center and caused ever more gravity to be at the surface, which caused more gravity than we had, you know, when we had 24-foot wingspan dragonflies, for instance. So sulfur-bearing amino acid really is the most important pathway. Most people never heard about that, but our product and our program totally focuses on that. Since 1978, I have not done anything else except for focusing on what the most powerful antioxidant is in the world. And it's an amazing thing, you know, because rich people, they will be given a lot of good information, typical, and they've got a bit of money, and they'll actually purchase whatever's got a massive amount of this substance in it. And so when you look at osmolytic element, what's that mean? It means nutrient that's going to pass through your cell membrane, meaning that a lot of things are not osmolytic. It's not going to pass through your membrane. Everything that's glassified, everything that's, you know, say it's pharmacopoeia, it's just dead, it's ceramified, it's got enzyme resistant linked, it's congealed, coagulated. It's heavy. It's dead. Life begets life and dead begets dead. So a whole food vitamin mineral complex really is like you've got vitamin C, vitamin K and copper and a very thin ring of ascorbic acid in that, and that's a whole food vitamin mineral complex, just the same as every other single vitamin. It has to be a whole food vitamin mineral complex, not something that's just a vitamin. What the hell is that? That's just an analog. It's going to get anywhere. It truly is dangerous. Yet what's the strongest, clearing and cleansing nutrient? It really is this sulfur dioxygenase pathway, which also produces energy. Wow. Yes, it does. It actually activates from blue light a nitrogenated terpenated compound as an example of what this is, and that's actually what gets rid of neoplastic addition. It'll actually really turn aerobic glycolysis round on its head. And a molecule that you could just have a sniff of could wake you up from a coma. And absolutely also the same molecule, switch off all unnecessary wrong energy pathways like a snap, and turn on the proper pathways like it's supposed to. These things all involve heat and cold shock protein, which most people never really heard about, but these osmolytic passages to nutrient always really requires these heat and cold shock protein, because it's actually what decoupling and decoupling actually does. So coupling is sort of really joining things, and that's heat, and decoupling really is cold shock protein. And you only have these two things which really impact your cold. To get cold, like, you know, E. coli can have released a cold shock protein and cause you to feel chilled. And it does that because it actually really caused temperature drop by 2 or 3 degrees for over a couple of hours, and then all of a sudden that E. coli kicked in and produced that cold shock protein, and that organizes the intestinal terrain to come back into order, and that's really what flu is or something. But human growth hormones really released when you're actually 12 times a day, when you actually have a quiet moment where your left nostril is more open and you're more in a parasympathetic mode, because that's when only human growth hormone is released. But how could it be if most are in a don't, won't, can't, should, try, but, must, only, never, always mode, and that's everything is a modal operator's necessity versus a modal operator possibility, like I wonder, maybe that's interesting, that could. See, these are ideas which you're probably getting a little bit, but it makes you more drought resistant, doesn't it? Because you've really got habits that actually cause you to be able to sustain the energy that you really have better. And so these molecules also are in drought-resistant plants, which is in abundance. So the most expensive ingredient, substance in the world is like $44,000 a kilo, and that's honey that comes from a cave, which has it's just an example of osmolytic element, and it's really got a lot of these substances, nutrients in it. And these are the things that can help you protect you against nerve gas or toxin that would kill you. It's the only substances that can actually completely turn that around. And rhodium features, you see, in our program, of course, Jubb's White Gold. And there's a reason why. Nobody's started really doing anything much with rhodium. Why? Because it costs so much money. How the hell would you pass that price on? You can't, yeah. Matter of fact, when I did this early, I knew times would come. I had to actually get my own source. Because how could I pass the price on? It would cost a fortune for me just to make the substance, and I often need rhodium to be able to make the substance itself. You know, to use plasma to break things down to micronize. So it's very small, and then it's all put with sphingosine and ceramide compounding in a nutraceutical manner, so it actually will pass through the blood-brain barrier and get through into your nucleus as well. It's a nutraceutical, that's what it's called. These are the more modern things, which is got amphoterics, it's got amphiphilics, it's got permittivity. It's an actual real alchemical molecule which is active, it's living, it's cold processed. You see, like you're supposed to have that. You're not supposed to cook everything up and just do all sorts of stuff like that. But you can a bit, and that's all useful perhaps, but not thinking at all where it's just glassified and ceramified, which most of these USP vitamins and things are sort of all really in a state like that. So how could you really have an intimate look more at cell cleansing if you didn't really focus on these things and you ask yourself, where's the forest? I mean, we're talking about osmolytic vital nutrient that would have come in, and the amount of carbon that we had back then. We have no carbon today at all. Flavonoids and increasing dopamine, which ordinarily would be, but where's the flavonoids that increase dopamine? Dopamine causes you to get things done. A lot of people can't hardly get up off the chair. It's a metabolic alkalosis because most people are actually over-breathing through the night and they've breathed off all their carbon, and so it's called a metabolic alkalosis. And so non-life colloid, nano-life colloid, aggregate, fuse, and differentiate into stone. And then stone forms all through the body and stopping cortisol, which we started to talk a bit about actually full circle in our program today. You have to stop all that cortisol excess. It's just ridiculous. How come nobody's ever talked about that? See? Because it's the sacred cow. And don't you need war to make money? So why would you want to tell people how to be more peaceful in their own selves? Clearing up, these blood disorders, you see, and dissolving silent inflammation. It's really how blood is formed, and not in the long bone whatsoever, but in the intestinal tract, in the large cell lamina propria, and also in the lung submucosa. From a process called aggregation, fusion, and differentiation, nitrogen is compounded by the intestinal tract, but all the gases and everything which makes your liquid crystal organ, which is your blood, is absorbed and digested through your lung. And because protein is just water and a gas, it's broken down to just gas and water and breathed off. And so the excess phosphate, not supposed to have it. All that phosphate causes stone and neoplasm and is subject to a loss of your tight junction fit where you are between the cells, and then a lot of escaped stuff goes on and causes people havoc because they don't really have the means to be able to break that down nor make neurotransmitter, and so people become a bit crazy, you see. And that's behind all craziness. Rooting calcium, that's all of that. That's based on stone formation and calcium phosphate, calcium carbonate, uric acid, and acetic acid. These are all ending up in excess, and because the body becomes dehydrated, the fluids start to become sticky, and cystic fibrosis exists more where the pancreas is, and long before actually anything else is going on, stones are forming and the pancreas is not really releasing stuff. And then somebody has a lot of fats one day and they could remember that they had a bit of a pain in their pancreas. It's like, yeah, that's right. And so laughing, of course, gives you a great benefit avoiding aversion, like we're talking about, causes your blood vessels to be really protected a hell of a lot more. Excessive pigment, that should be avoided, shouldn't it, on the program? But if somebody reads and learns more about this work, about Jubb cell rejuvenation, they'll really see that methionine, which should be avoided because it ever breaks down into homocysteine, which is so sharp, it actually coerces through the vessels and actually causes lipoprotein A to be laid down in your vessels, which is wrong. Now, that's what causes congestion. And so just stop the high methionine diet, move more toward live food, learn what that is, get rid of all the high cortisol, which would have always ever made high calcium. Now your calcium levels are low, and you've got more stone dissolving, more reducing that high calcium excess, which causes the body not to function, or because a lot of don't want to come to a try but must only was, and there was a practice of a meditative state of eye awareness. And so your lungs, where you just look relaxed and you only maybe make 8 breaths a minute or something in the day, and maybe only 3 or 4 at night or something, really small. It's an elemental nitrogen which is compounded by your gut, and all the rest is really compounded more by your lungs. And it's these fragrant tyrosine molecules that you could bring in, so unbelievable, that assist to help you, with lung health and things. And tyrosinase and tyrosine feature big in our program, and rhodium does too. But if you focus a bit on the content, of course, you could see that whole brain functioning really stops all those steps, you've got formula which is triggering more quorum sensing that you could bring in. These are more aromatic mineral transporters, a natural pacifin, meaning natural antibiotics, which is the indigenous meaning within, and the exogenous meaning outside that come in. And these are all involved in your cell mediated immunity as well, and also chemical mediated immunity. And so epigenetic, meaning above DNA, something outside controlling the DNA, like what we're talking about, triggers more quorum sensing, and like, for instance, cold shock protein is used in the body to reduce more swelling, and of course cold is as well. So you've got an oxygen carbon dioxide dissociation curve, and it's really a natural thing. You've got to have carbon in your body for oxygen to be delivered. And then there's some shows which I've talked a bit about this, but it's a quite normal breath, which really is a total volume that's really modest. Nose breathing is out, so you don't ever do that again during sleep. That's wrong. JC Quantum more is a shifted oxygen, into a dissociated state, so that you can have some oxygen inside your body. If you don't have carbon, you're not going to have oxygen inside your body. You've got a state of hypoxia, you see. Because there's an oxygen dissociation curve, meaning what? It means if you've got carbon, hemoglobin wants it, and it says, please give me the carbon, and when it takes the carbon aboard, it dislodges the oxygen. It says, I really don't want that. And the cell goes, wow, thank you, so I've got oxygen. So that's how that happens. And so you've got a JC quanta, which is the smallest pixelated dot making up a conductive condition where space is, and cell spectral radiance enhancement, and inside a far infrared zone, you have a resonant condition that relates to temperature. And so the temperature is supposed to drop as you sleep, you see, because if it doesn't, that's wrong. Start that now, because you're going to have a good night's sleep. And far infrared maximal radiation sort of is an extents, meaning it's really like a question where people are trying to figure out what to do. Of course, a far infrared is going to make heat, and all the rest of the light are things that you get through daylight, and that's going to be producing various things as well. But for a functional plasticity, more of water's ability to move in any direction, it does so more in the far infrared zone, not in any other zone. And it makes a gel water, the Life Hydrate does, which is one of our products. It makes the water into a gel because it combines the water to be 3 hydrogen rather than 2. And so into an antioxidant, in fact, it's the smallest antioxidant in the world, is life hydrate. You put that in your water. I mean, it's a resonant benefit of that structured water. Life hydrate in the water really causes this gel phase, which is the fourth phase of a colloid, which the fifth phase is as a plasma. So as a colloid, you've got lithium and fluorine, which I really carefully selected the nutrients which go into the life hydrate itself, to make sure that there was such a kick in both directions. It was unbelievable because it was a real tensor wave dispersal more by the isotonics that it created. And you've got acetic acid. I mean, you've got in life hydrate, which is a natural pacifier. And how did I find this? Looking at nature. And why wouldn't somebody copy nature's the best? And why wouldn't you do it just as nature did it? See? Yeah? So the bees collected all that stuff, from the most incredible wilderness place in the fresh air in the world, and that's $44,000 a kilo, because those people who know this, they're going to find these nutrients in that. And it's very, very mineral rich, very dense, and it's all in an osmolytic element. And so life colloid really has a JC quanta, which, for instance, potassium only can transmutate at a certain constant, which is at 98.6 degrees, and that's reason, isn't it, that our body temperature has to be kept at that. And so dark is 10,000 times faster than light, and dark is the quality of your sleep, not the length of time, but the darkness of your sleep. And the mitochondrial structure really tap energy on demand, and Jubb's formulas really help concentrate this osmolytic element, and your pancreas and Brunner glands start to actually function again because you've got really osmoregulation more. And so sensory fibers, it's really reacting to hot, cold protein, and hot shock triggers all this inward signal, and you've got your hot and cold protein, which really is maintaining a proper turgor, like a pressure on the membrane and inside the cell, so it's not shriveled up or so expanded out that it's not going to work proper. And so you've got a north-negative field, which is subatmospheric, of course, and you've got thermoregulatory types of physiological strain. And so a condition causes things to be drawn outside the cells, sort of like waste. Yes, good. And what would happen if you didn't have that subatmospheric pressure on the outside of the cell? It's not going to work. So thermoregulatory physiological strain, where you actually heat the body, you use far infrared, or you use ice, and you use hot, cold, and cleansing, and you're really increasing your psychosomatic sort of threshold. And it's this life colloid alchemy, which it makes up all the cells of your body. So all the cells are made up out of individual life colloid, which have their own reproductive schedule, and they come together just as a symbiosis. Symbiosis means mutual lived assistedness, and this describes nature, not Darwinism, which is stupid. No, it does not speak to anything except a bit of a devil in you, and put out there because of it, just like Louis, that was all about past your eyes. Just pull the wool over your eyes so that you'd cook the truth, because there was not a single flask that didn't become turbid. And so how long has that lie been? How long has Louis Pasteur's lie been? And does anybody know Louis Pasteur lied? And Duchamp was the man you want to listen to back in the day. Rejuvenation really requires coupling and decoupling protein, which is found in our formula, and digesting the plasm really is via cellular enzymes, and monophasic cycle, which means only eat once a day, because that's it. Somatotyping shows you that you're a monophasic person, not triphasic or diphasic. So it triggers cell cleansing when you're monophasic, and Jubb's secret ingredient really is these aromatic amino acids, like is found in these blood-borne inhibitors, you see, in the blood. It blocks and stops the expression of double spore from migrating or transmutating themselves into a mold, fungus, or yeast, or a dysbiotic sort of bacteria, and only keeping it in a healthy zone. So the lung is really the primary organ of detoxification. It's transmutation by life colloid diversity, really, and anabolic steroid more is necessary, for you to be able to have proper iron uptake. And the life colloid is going to give you the substances that you need, to be able to have really good uptake of nutrients and be able to absorb and make blood. And so fever, of course, as we talked about, induces a useful condition of life colloid spore. You've got endogenous and exogenous pyrogens. We've been talking a bit about heat molecules that cause heat and cold. That cause cold. You've got blue light that activates a red light. It's activated by red light, meaning the red light comes on, phase conjugates with red, lets the blue in, and blue activates these nitrogenated terpenated compounds and flavins, and they're continuously releasing a stream of energy. And so how do you get rid of plastic out of the body? You've got to sweat it out. You've got to bring these class radiative element in, which is in Jubb's program, and the body can start to clear away and detox all that plastic, which otherwise is going to be a bit of an endocrine disruptor. But cell rejuvenation really is assisting sort of the magnetic condition of your whole body, and it's really made up out of magneton and the JC quanta. And so gaining a greater magnetic threshold, that's what you really should be doing. And it's a hot-cold training, which is really expanding your oxygen uptake and your max. So what would happen in the heat if you could sweat 3 litres when somebody only could sweat 1 litre? Are you going to keep cool? Yes. So the mind and the gut and the mind signal all together, nerve applying the gut and the brain axis. You've got life colloid in your gut, and you're made up out of life colloid. You've got a neural signal improving serotonin and dopamine as you're supposed to. You've got to have total dark to sleep. And why shouldn't you have whole brain functioning? And you've got calibrated more an internal condition. You could look at Jubb's instrument, and you could use that to learn how to be able to determine to the degree to which somebody's more in whole brain functioning. It was one of the very first instruments that I put together. And it teaches people how to look at behaviour, see. So anyway, getting back to total dark, of course, that's what's really needed for sleep. And you've got high phosphate, high methionine. And how are you going to get any peace if you're eating a dead food diet with high phosphate, high methionine, and you've got artificial light that's just going to kill you? Because you can't survive. You can't have artificial light. You can't have that all the time. You can't be put into the cold. You can't be fed crap. What's that mean? That means the program's designed to kill you. So is that what's happening in Pry Son or Pry Daughter in the nations around the world? You've got trauma reenactment syndrome. You've got cerebral brain function. You've got a lot of state of hypoxia. You've got people shivering and shaking, and they've got the shakes, and you've got people absolutely not explaining anything properly. You've got what's cognitive. Something is going on before that. It's called precognitive. Something's going on within you that causes you to think the way you do, and that's called precognitive. This is kind of like what we're doing when we're doing our program. We're really focusing on what's precognitive, what's going on below that assists cause you to process new information properly. So a set of natural cycle could exist where pancreas is more osmolytic in its element, and you're giving it a chance to be able to heal rather than saying, bugger you, I'm going to eat that brownie. Or bugger you, I feel good, like I'm going to chuck into some more ice cream. Because you don't know how wonderful ghrelin is, which is the hunger hormone, and how much that's important. All of a sudden you realise, wow, that's human growth hormone. That's what I'm releasing, human growth hormone, when you're feeling hungry more. So sleep impacts more your quality of your life index, certainly, and dark light cycle and antioxidants also cause you to have protection. And hypocapnia, which is really breathing off all your carbon whilst you have slept. You never heard about that? Stop. Correct it. Tell everybody else to too. And then going to assist, have nice amount of melatonin. Anyway, I know there might be some questions. I was just thinking, if I was to talk just to everything and I just gave you whole brain, I gave you Jubb cell rejuvenation in a nutshell. Of course, you'd hear about whole brain functioning like you have. You'd hear about neoplasm and how all conditions really is neoplasm. You'd be hearing how the cycle more, there's an endocrine cycle, which really causes you to have health if you follow that. And a sleep-wake cycle, which is more monophasic. So why would you want to mess with that and think that everything's going to be okay? No, it's not. The pitch black at the night reduces distraction. It gives you the better sleep. And a warm bath effect, of course. Prion in your brain causes more insomnia. It causes early death eventually. How about learning more about the molecule of death where people are? You see a signal which everybody receives really causes the stomach to be empty. Easy T, which is really designed to improve liver lipid metabolism and cause ghrelin to be raised during sleep cycle. And so you've got a polarized type of behavior otherwise, which would have always been going on, triggering over acidity, and it always just breaking things down. And these short pulsed wave repeats, like we started talking about, that cause the brain freeze, is going on. How's anybody ever function where that is? And why not have a bit of calorie restriction, give your stomach a rest, actually, so to give the workers there a bit of a rest? Because now it's going to release ghrelin, which it should, and cortisol excess is no longer. And so you're not going to be hungry when you had your CBDs or whatever. You see? I mean, you won't feel out of it when you had a bit of a CBD or something because, you know, you've got all your enzymes working. When you've got your enzymes working, then you're basically not going to feel anything because you're already in a state like what this is. So cortisol causes excessive fibrolysis and plaque. And it blocks and clogs the pancreas the most. And so what's the pancreas about? It's about the sweetness of life. Diabetes type 1 and type 2, it's all stone in your pancreas and loss of sweetness. So cognitive decline really starts at an early age just because somebody wasn't told, hey, the world is basically good, which now, who needs any stress modifying stuff? No, they don't. But if you're taught, hey, the world's basically bad, Jesus is going to have a lot of how to manage all the stress. And doesn't going to work, something that you're not good at, which you would be wise to look at. Cognitive decline really starts more from prion disease and a lot of don't, won't, can't, should, try, but must only, and aversive types of programming, which pleasure neurologically inhibits the aversive componentry and vice versa. And what's pleasant is +1, so you've got to add those up to equal 5. Whereas anything aversive is -5 straight off the cuff. And that's how your brain is set up, you see, to avoid stuff. But the molecule of death really is in glyconeurominic acid. There's no bone in our body that can take anything from an animal or an insect, a fish or a bird. That's ridiculous. Its heat and cold shock protein isn't what proper fits for us, not at all. It's thermoregulation, and where that is, and we've never evolved to have any of that in our cells in the manner because there's toxin with it and triggering non-ecological life colloid, and so it's hyperosmotic, meaning extremely absorbable material. When you don't have a tight junction fit, you're going to absorb a lot of stuff when your pancreas doesn't work proper, and now you're going to be really, really toxic and going to feel crazy. I'm going to have a lot of pain, and I'm going to have to die the slow, painful death of your ancestors. But osmotically active organ solute, which is really in our program, is really what our program is very much about. And so fear-induced fever, you might have heard about that. But fever itself induces useful life colloid spore, and these exogenous and endogenous material only in a terrain that's wrong could have been pyrogenic and congestedness and heat, causedness and inflammation. Blue light activates these molecules, and red light phase conjugates with red, lets the blue in. And so how the body can detox from plastic, you really got to sweat that stuff out. You've got to have clathrative element that can combine with the plastics and push it to where the sweat gland is so you can clear it out. You've got cell rejuvenation assisting more build up a magnetic threshold, and it's really made up out of magneton and the JC quanta, and gaining a greater magnetic threshold. Hot cold training really expands your oxygen uptake, like we said, your mind and your gut, and your gut, the mind, and signaling of nerve and gut brain axis happens like it's supposed to when you have a fitness. So life colloid and neural signaling is really improved. You've got serotonin and dopamine. These are so important, mate. Blood is a liquid crystal osmolyte, and loose, greasy, difficult to flush stool shows that your pancreas is not functioning properly. You've got an enhanced osmolytics in the program that what we have. It may be 2,000 years into a future. We've got the most concentrated substances that you could find that assist to turn these things around, and it's all done in osmolytics, like I said, and micronized, and will be absorbed just across your tongue. And so it's really osmolytic diffusion across the membrane, and osmolytic substance like ubiquitin molecule that we have in our program, and potassium, which you could bring in, and it keeps all good where the blood is at a temperature of 98.6 degrees. So formula really stops abnormal blood clotting and far infrared addedness into things where the radiation really is of a resonance to assist help cause cleansing the most. And all disease really is a neoplasm. So going over it and just finishing up things, I'd say, cold shock and heat shock protein really cause you a synthesis and a degradation of protein to clear stuff away and build things back up, and to wake up the neuron again. You see, you could be switching back on vital cell response and applying heat and cold shock protein. You've got this N-acetylneurominic acid, which is your primary body surfactant, vitamin L or life hydrate, which is a product that we have, which lowers the surface tension immediately, causing you to really clear away and prevent all the hyperlipidemia and inflammation of the liver and body, which is like fats not broken down properly. And the Harderian gland all gets kicked off, and your cold shock protein really starts to function. You've got Jubb cell rejuvenation, which really restores melatonin, and it's very hypothermic, really. It really is because your temperature is slowly dropping whilst you sleep at night. And it's very important because as an antioxidant, it actually assists to break a lot of material down and everything. Anyway, that might be just a bit of a stint for the day, mate. What might there be some questions a little, perhaps?
Oh, thank you so much, David. You really saved my life again tonight. I was so hungry, and then when you messaged me and you talked about the Brunner gland, it reminded me of the metaphor that you said with the two hands washing each other, of the intestine healing itself. So all I did was just have a little honey when I came home, and it held me over till we got on the phone. So now I'll be able to.
Oh yeah, it's so good because actually, like, I might like have a tea, and how wonderful it is to have a little teaspoon of honey here, there, a little bit. How beautiful it is just to manage things like this. We'll have some salt, ocean wind evaporated salt and things. And how much energy does anybody need if you don't have any limited mind function and things are flowing and you just empty itself? And how much energy does somebody ever need really where they've got endogenous opium? It's really increasing people's ability to be able to laugh like the 4NR does, you see, yeah? Yeah, you see, it's just it's a joy, isn't it? Hey, yes, it is.
You're the best. I do have a question from Mary.
Yeah.
I believe she's, I'm gonna say, on the Isle of Man. She was responding to what you said about hydroxyapatite, and she said she looked into the formulas, and a lot of them are made from crushed up egg, egg, and she was wondering
Yeah.
if she did something like with lemon juice. I forgot what the formula she said, but I don't know. I just figured I'd ask you.
Okay. Well, see, if you have calcium ions, and you're bringing calcium in, and you have a very nice South positive substance as well, like citric acid and malic acid, and you may have got some acetic acid and things like this. You've got the various substances that your body needs to be able to produce calcium appetite. I mean, the body always will produce that calcium appetite if you don't have cortisol. Now, if you have cortisol, it's always going to be an excessive amount. And so after that, now saturation is not working and all kinds of conditions start to function not properly because you 10,000 to 1 stronger calcium is on the outside than calcium is on the inside of the cell. There is no other mineral that is more disparate in its difference, its differential between itself. So phosphate in our body and calcium combining, and other acid does combine with calcium as well to make stone, and these are the things which actually help. So somebody could over time maybe have lost their teeth, but not have ever have an infection basically. And so where dentistry is, it kind of destroyed the teeth a lot. They could have done a lot of things which really would have never make it through because it made much more surface areas where things could collect where it would unusually be. They took a lot of enamel away. And so what could somebody do where that went on where their life is? Dentists can have ruined the person's teeth. And today there's ways for someone to learn what you could do to have something like an implant perhaps to help where something is much better than a lot of things and it's more blunt, not goes much, doesn't have to, it fuses with the bone, and it's a very good option today made out of zirconium.
Oh, wow. That's
But if
amazing.
toothpaste and things is made more like where this is, which it will in eventualness, calcium at the moment, where's all the calcium coming from? Rocks mainly, and not life, which it could or wisely come from extractiveness of life. Yeah. Or extracted out of seawater. There's like different things you could do, But anyway, I think that actually most maybe a cavity can be existed, for instance, and it naturally wants to seal itself up, and it sort of seals itself up so that the nerve is protected, and calcium goes a bit above the nerve to ossify. And so as a tooth could have been broken or things that happen, it's repairing itself and healing itself as much as it can fully, so that it can never ever be a trouble.
Nice.
Anyway.
That's amazing.
Mm.
Okay. So my next question was also a comment on one of your videos. They
Mm.
want to know about lectins. There's Dr. Gundry who's talking about how lectins come from a lot of plants as a defense mechanism, and when
Mm-hmm.
we eat certain foods that are high in lectins, it causes problems. Um, I think it was actually on a video when I was making something with
Oh, like,
sprouted
could we give us an
quinoa.
example? Oh, well, one thing first we could say, some partial truth exists because when somebody overeats anything, that's going to be problematic no matter what. And a plant always has various substances on it. Each one does. Like an apple has a certain amount of substance in it that will only allow you to eat a certain amount of apple. Mushroom has a certain amount of substance that's in there that only allow you to eat a certain amount of mushroom. So what's this bloke talking? Because these things are all designed to be able to do that. So is that the problem, or is it that you're overeating something which you shouldn't, perhaps, or I mean, I can hear a lot of hypochondriacs going on where this topic, massive hypochondriacal condition. Because why? Why isn't somebody talking about is your pancreas working properly, and are you more plant-based? And are you eating food which has enzymes in it? Wouldn't that be actually a better question? Because, yeah, why is it that somebody's just not even bothered? You're just going to not care that food is all cooked out, nothing is left with it, or you're just eating flesh food, or you want to stop people from eating tomatoes or something. It's like, oh, Jesus, it's really a bit wrong, personally. Doesn't mean that one should learn a bit about how stickiness comes to be, and things could come to stick. But how can anything stick when you don't have when you have a field which is in an unstick zone? Is it because cells have an unstick zone or they don't, and so then these things can cause trouble? You see, these are questions, aren't they? I think this is a variable thing more, not like a fixed thing per se. You've got to look at things a little bit more like, how much oxalic acid can you take? Is that going to just say, okay, all vegetables that have oxalic acid are going to be really bad, really bad, really bad? It's like, please, chill. What's the reason why these things happen? And is there any benefit? Yes, there is. So, a certain amount of something can give you a benefit, and a certain amount over the top of that is going to be overboard, isn't it? Like cyanide. A certain amount of cyanide you must have. Yes, you must. You've got to have up to a bit less than 4 parts per million in the blood, because it is a blood-borne inhibitor that blocks the expression of a double spore into mold, fungus, and yeast. And it acts as a blood-borne inhibitor. Now, if you have excessive amounts, you can't break it down. What happens with that? Toxic. It's toxic. See? Yes? So I'm not sure where we get off where that is. I think that certain food stuffs like definitely have got way more lectin in it, like beans, for instance. And they do have pyrrologlobulin and all this sort of stuff. And it's really not a food much for us. Tend to certain sort of nuts which are not nuts, penduckles, for instance, like cashew, things like this can have extreme amounts of. But why is somebody not talking about prion? Because prion absolutely will kill you. You see, it's sort of personally the topic. I think is a little bit. I think it's wise for somebody to learn, but then let's put things into a scale where things can work. Yes, yeah, that's all.
Okay. Well, the the doctor always is like you're saying. He's saying, oh, if you cook them in a pressure cooker, it removes the lectins. And the recipe I was making, I was sprouting the quinoa, and I thought that maybe that would deactivate them. But
Yeah, you're supposed to sort of do food like in live food where you activate the food. You're getting rid of the enzyme inhibitor of it, because you're getting rid of all types of lectins material.
okay, I guess I just have one more question. It's something I always wondered. And I noticed it in myself too. I guess it has to do with my pancreas because when I speak, I can see the upper left lip doesn't move as much as the other lips, and I noticed that also in some other people when they speak, like different parts of the lip doesn't like open or move. Is that a form of tardive dyskinesia?
Um, well, tardive dyskinesia is where more a movement exists that kind of it shouldn't be, and it's an unwanted movement. So tardive conditions are more sort of unwanted movements, like somebody sort of has a little jerk or they have a twitch, you know.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, it's like when you go to sleep, all of a sudden you might have a twitch or a jerk. Yeah, it's like a tardive jerk. And so um, um, drugs can definitely cause tardive dyskinesia, massive, all sorts of pharmaceutical drugs, especially mind-altered drugs. We've got more tardive dyskinesia than you could ever think of because of these drugs, all right? Very serious neurotoxins. Once you look into what that is, actually, yeah. Oh, but what the question was, is it still, we get to the bottom of the question yet, mate, or something?
Oh yeah, sorry.
Mm.
So it was just I was wondering I guess it has to do with the face reading because when I'm
Mm-hmm.
looking at
Yeah.
myself speak, it looks, I guess it's the area of the pancreas, the upper left lip, where it doesn't move as
Okay.
much when I'm
Yes.
talking.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So, in fact, it is true that where Asperger's syndrome is, lesion always is found in the intestine, and was when somebody was a child. It caused conditions of a child not having ease of ability to see their mother or their father's face. And when you can see your mum or dad's face, like because your eyesight is just designed only to kind of be able to see 2 feet away, and pretty clear you can, but then after that you can't sort of really see too much, like black and white striped out bit things and contrasty stuff a little when you're first born. But for the first period of time in life, your eyesight is really close by. And the reason for this is because you've got an imprint state where you don't have distraction. All that you've got there is, looking at your mum's or your dad's face and their facial expressions. But if you were fed formula that just kicked you around, you didn't have anything much, and you got celiac and you had inflammation and things like this, and foodstuffs came in and they caused excitotoxic nerve damage, and 90% of sometimes the nerve in the hippocampus and other places just get knocked out, and including the mirror motor neuron, which impacts people's capacity to not have his ability to socialize or be able to pick up the feelings of others, because it's an area of your brain which really enables you to be able to do this. But if somebody's in an adverse state, they're not going to get into the frontal cortex where you're able to actually have any compassion to know what anyone else really feels. Let's see. Can you ask the question again so I could stay orientated a bit?
Oh, definitely, definitely. Uh, so I'm looking at videos when I'm speaking, and it looks like there's
Was it?
almost like a paralysis on
Yes,
my
it
lip.
is. Yes. So most people actually who have degrees of Asperger's always have between the fifth and ninth cranial nerve, between the fifth and ninth cranial nerve, between the 11th and ninth and the fifth cranial nerve, you could have degrees of challenge where nerve hasn't been supported, and so you always will see like slight sunkenness where that is also to, you can see that often not any expression much, but more stillnesses of a dead zone relative in the middle of the face more. And there's a disease, which is called Willy Prater's disease, and it's really like you could look at the physiognomy and you can tell the degree to which somebody could have sort of symptoms a little bit like this, but it does affect like your speech and the ability to articulate, and all kinds of things could have gone on because of the congestion and excitotoxic compounds that was brought in through the milk, like high glutamate count and these sorts of things, cause excitotoxic types of conditions. And cause brain cells to go through the process of apoptosis and no longer quite be there, but excitotoxic types of conditions causing cell death as well. So our blood-brain barrier is supposed to protect the all these areas, but close by where the blood-brain barrier is missing some, it doesn't have its proper tight junction heat and albumin, which is supposed to really be so fine. In fact, actually, that only one platelet out of 120 particles itself that could actually pass through the blood-brain barrier that actually can get into your brain, be small enough, and so it's acceptable. And where the blood-brain barrier wasn't really kept as children, especially boys, where testosterone wasn't testosterone is, their brain hasn't developed until they're 18 months of age, and the mirror motor neuron is still growing, and so it's very vulnerable. And so we see a lot of boys, massive injuries from these non-ecological types of treatment approaches, which has never been ever about actually saving anyone's life whatsoever. It's a money maker.
Yeah. I just was wondering as you're speaking. So I know you have always been so wonderfully teaching whole brain functioning, and gosh, as I learn more and more, I can hopefully keep going and become proficient.
Yeah.
And also wonder because you've also said that the body comes first, body, mind, and then spirit. And as you just said, there's things that are in the food supply which are harmful to the brain. And so,
Yeah, exactly.
is there something that maybe we could leave off with, like
Oh, yeah.
something to do to help not only
Well,
us
there's so many
achieve.
things to help you regrow your brain, and there's nerve growth factor. There's things that you create. By being really more in whole brain functioning, you're going to create more of a mother molecule called pro-opiomelanocortin. That has at least a 241 amino acid chain, which is really very large, of course, and it regulates your hypothalamus pituitary axis and adrenal axis, and this is so very important because your regulation of information and molecule and things that's created causes you to have a proper functioning. When somebody would have not done that, but had more stressed out stuff, of course, going to tax the body a hell of a lot, and human growth hormone isn't being released like it should, so that's it's just natural that longevity indicators really you're looking at behaviour which causes a greater fitness and longer lifespan. But who asks someone, when was the last time you broke into a run? Like if people are over 30, often that was the last, can't remember the last time they broke into a run, which that's pretty bad, isn't it? There's so much that we talked about today, which is about monophasic diet, for instance, like people who are graze whores, just grazing through the day. I've been thinking that's okay. It's just totally disastrous. We have a natural ultradian circadian clock, which is so important, matter of fact, that everything can fit more to this. And I'm positive that what we've talked about today is going to spark quite a bit more interest, in various subject matter and things, and an intimate look more into cell cleansing, really questioning things a little bit. Is it that what you're looking at today, is it natural? Right. and it cannot be. We have got natural nutrients. It can truly be. You've got flavonoid, which you could have brought in, and these things, and it actually increases and gives you the capacity to have dopamine. Unless you have pantothenic acid B5, how are you going to make dopamine? And so if somebody looks at things a little more like I do, it's going to be more alchemical where you are. At a world that we would come to, what I'm talking to you about, maybe a couple thousand years into the future, because even to this day, I would share with people how blood is formed, and the world is not designed to cause genius to see the light of day, especially if it's more to do with health and a proper sustainableness, or how government's supposed to be more with administrative council, and everybody should get going with that. And it's the greatest enemy that you haven't, you know what I mean? Because that is the chain of command. It's not a chain of command. It's getting information from a corporate businesses, and they're just talking about their blah, blah, stupid stuff. God help us. How horrible. And it's never broken. So let's break the ice, yeah? Let's do what we can to get more breakthrough where we are, yeah? That's what I reckon. Anyway, love you, mate. We'll catch up to each other in the future show. Love you, mate.
Thank you.
Bye, mate.